Welcome, y'all. It's so fun to have this season back underway. I probably told you my last episode, but I'm going to be doing a little mini series within this whole season on all things sex. So you've been warned. If you're driving with your kids in the car and you just turn this on, then just give it a quick pause, drop them off of school, and then turn it back on because this is high adult content, but it's things that need to be talked about in the church that so few people ever talk about. And so I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. I was blown away. I've been in like hardcore therapy for years now, and I've never talked to a sex therapist. And this conversation, I know sometimes it can be like a heavy subject. This is fun, it is light, it's informative, it's hopeful. And my goal with doing this series around sex is to remove the stigma of guilt, shame, dirty, and let's reintroduce this entire concept in our lives as something God blessed. So I'm bringing you this week, Teri Cress. She is a family and marriage therapist. She resides up in the Pacific Northwest, where I'm from, on Whidbey Island, and she's also a sex therapist. So we get into the weeds really quickly. You will fall in love with her, just like I did. She is dynamic at bringing in the spiritual aspects as well as just the practical ones. And we talk about everything ranging from what to do if inside of your marriage, one person wants sex too much and one person never wants it, all the way from that to how to communicate sexual desires, how to grow sexually. And so I'm just so excited for you to hear this episode. It is so fun. I'm going to bring her back actually to talk about some other things because we just ran out of time because she's amazing. So enjoy this episode with my new favorite person, Teri Cress. Hi, Teri.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. Thank you for doing this.
You're so welcome.
Sorry for all the technical stuff. It's like our sound engineer is out with COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so it's always so nerve-wracking when he's not here because I don't know what button to push or anything. So
yeah, I know.
Thanks for your patience.
No problem. I'm glad it worked out.
First of all, where am I talking to you from? Where are you?
I'm on Whidbey Island up in the Northwest, just about an hour north of Seattle.
I'm from Seattle.
No way.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That's so fun. I'm actually from more of a rural town, about an hour and a half south, but then I lived in Seattle right before I got married. And so my aunt and uncle are on Mercer Island.
Well, that's cool because that's my whole growing up years, right there.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, so did you grow up on Whidbey Island?
Well, Bellevue.
Oh my gosh, I worked at Microsoft.
Oh my goodness.
That's so fun. I went to Microsoft every day for a long time.
Wow. Small world.
Oh, such a small world. Well, my husband and I love the Northwest. So.
Yeah, how'd you get to Dallas?
Well, I was in missions after post Microsoft life. I was in missions, and then I married a pastor from the Seattle area as well. And then we moved to Texas 14 years ago and just fell in love with the people here. We love Texas, but our family is still up in Seattle. And so we are always back and forth.
Okay. Totally.
Well, now, how did you get into this line of work? Tell me a little bit about you, and then I'll ask you all the sex questions.
Yeah, right. So in the general line of work, just really feeling called to marriages. That happened in my 20s. Just really kind of grew up in a broken home where I grew up with my dad and several stepmothers. Mm-hmm. And I would play a game with myself when they fought and had conflict. And I'd say, I'd think, well, if he would just do this or say that, and then she would be able to do this. And then if she would just do that. And I had this game kind of that I did with myself all the way through till I left home. Wow. And then when I was in college, I had a few, of course, I wanted to study what I missed. I missed, the whole sense of what is a family, like what's a healthy family. And so I studied family relations is what my major was, and with that had a lot of psychology and sociology, and my psych teachers would say how, like, we'd interact and they'd say, you have some wisdom that is not your age. And I'm like, really? I was like, absorbing this affirmation, and they're like, yeah, you have some experiential life that people don't have your age. And they said, would you ever consider working in with people in relationships? And it just started percolating that thought. And so by the time I was done with my undergrad, I knew that someday I wanted to be a marriage and family therapist. But I also really wanted to have a Christian home and a family. And that was probably, the greatest heart desire. Yeah. And so I thought in my mind, I thought, when I'm older and gray, like that kind of thought, like, not now, I want a family. But then I married my high school sweetheart. I stepped into some work with pregnancy centers where, just difficult situations, and did some work, just again, working with people and listening and helping them process decisions and all that. And then I started a family, and for years, just delighted in that. And then, but always a learner, always gleaning. And then there was a point where I went, well, there was this lay counseling training at church, and I thought, I'll do that. That's up my alley. That's my passion. So I did that for a good 5 years, but I was only trained to work with the wives, and the husbands wanted to come see me, and I couldn't do it. I wasn't trained to do that. And I'm like, okay, Lord, well, is it time now? Am I older and grayer? Is it time? So I really felt the Lord saying, yes, it's time. And so I went to graduate school in 2005 and finished in 2007. And your second year is all about your practice. You're practicing your internship. And I had 20 clients a week. Where as a student. So it was intense and a lot, but I was older, I was wiser, I was grayer. And so I don't know, the Lord just brought those people. And in that training, I had these incredible, godly, passionate people that were all about discipling the church in sexual formation. Basically, the idea of what's healthy, right? How do we? And my professors were Dr. Doug Rosenau and Dr. Mike Seitzman, Deborah Taylor. All they started the Institute of Sexual Wholeness, which is a whole slew of trained Christian sex therapists who work with anyone and specifically the church in educating what healthy is. And I fell in love with their passion. And I heard the Lord in a class learning, saying, I want you to do this. And so I said, yes, I'm so comfortable with talking about sexuality. Even though I wasn't so good at it as a mom, right? Like I wasn't so, if I could go back and do it all over, I would totally do it different.
Really? What would you do different? Do you have boys or girls?
I have 3 boys and a girl. And I grew them up in the purity culture, which isn't such a healthy aspect. Like, I was willing to talk about it. This was before my training, I was willing, but at the same time, it was more, let's give you this talk of how, purity is. And then the whole, are you pure or unpure? That's the harm in it. It's not, it's not a culture or an education of stewardship. It's different. It's more of, okay, this is black or this is white. Are you pure? Are you white or are you black? And if you step over, what's the line there? And so pretty rigid, pretty, we gave them all rings, it was that
I grew up in that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the whole
Mm-hmm.
culture.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, part of that culture also that never really got named is so much the idea that sexuality, sex is for the guy.
Yes.
And it's up to the girl to not tantalize him, right? To not dress seductively, or that we are, as females, are responsible for our brothers, their purity. And so the codependency training there,
oh my gosh,
right? It's multifaceted. And so I unfortunately grew up sort of on the beginning of that. I came out of a non-Christian home, didn't have any of that purity culture per se. So I think part of that was the Lord went before me and did. I sat under godly men that taught about sexuality from the pulpit a few times in high school and even college, before I really came to be absorbed into the Christian culture of the day of purity. And so there's goodness back in my history with what healthy is, and the Song of Songs, and just the beauty of God. Like there was a real love and appreciation for God's design in that before I got sucked up in the culture.
The Christian culture.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I relate so much with that. It was a different time, I don't think there's one person to blame, but I know exactly what you're speaking to. It like so resonates. Like it was like, just don't do it, sign here, put the ring on, and then everything's going to be perfect if you just don't do it. And that's not life.
That's right. And so, and it came out of, what I understand, if I look back and can I digest it a little bit, it came on the heels of HIV. And the fear of HIV, right? Yeah. So the culture was already living, in general, the culture, let alone the church culture, was living in this fear of HIV because it was deadly. And so we wanted to keep our kids from it. And it wasn't so much a pervasive talk, but that's where the purity, the energy
so interesting.
From that was from that fear. Wow. Which is so like Satan to use something like that to just taint it.
Taint a good thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And another pathway of messing us up. So so it does, I can give grace to that, but at the same time I grieve my responsibility of harm to my children or to the culture in general, to the church culture. Because now, there's more understanding of how to teach it in a stewarding, shepherding, beautiful blessing instead of that fear, kind
guilt,
of
shame.
Black or white, pure or not pure kind of thing.
And I was going to ask you, when you say stewardship versus the black and white, like what is I guess we can just start there. We'll start with kids and kind of move up. Like for kids, how do we best steward this, or as pastors or leaders,
Yeah.
And how would you describe stewardship versus purity culture?
Right. So, the purity culture, or it was more, thou shalt not, or it's rigid. It's put handcuffs on. It's not a blessing. It's a curse, right? It's kind of a clamp down and go legalistic. Yes. Whereas stewarding or shepherding, it's more the idea that we all have resources, right? We have financial resources, time resources, energy, sexuality. Like it's part of the list of all the resources. And so we need to teach how to steward that resource. Yes. What do we do with our sexual drive or our energy or our vision, how we see things, or how do we steward a highly sexualized culture, right? And the bombardment if we don't steward it, just how pervasive it can be and how harmful to exposing us to things that we're not ready for, sexualizing us too early. So, boundaries, scripture's full of setting boundaries. Boundaries are God's provision. Yes. And we need boundaries on everything, even our energy and our time. A Sabbath is a God imposed, if you will, invitation, I should say, to boundaries, right? To
a mandatory fun day from God.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah. And a day to re-energize, so to shut out all the noise and be able to have more silence and solitude and stillness for health. And so it's that idea of just like recognizing it's a part of who you are, and it's a, if you will, commodity to be spent, just like all the other.
That's so beautiful.
Right?
I love that.
And so how do we do that well? And how do we do it in submission to the Lordship of Jesus Christ?
Yes. Whether
we're single or whether we're married.
Yeah.
And that sexual integrity piece, whether we're single or married, is this part of that stewarding our sexual integrity.
I love that. I love that. I've never heard it put like that. And it's so beautiful. And it already reframes it as a positive.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I love.
Exactly. Bless it and not curse it.
Yes. That's so good. Okay. Well, can I run you through a few different scenarios and questions? I've been asking some of my girlfriends, and, you know, I was asking my husband this morning, like, what do you think would be best? Like, I have a Christian sex therapist for an hour. Like, what should I, And so I think what I hear from a lot of friends is that, are we normal? Right? Like, is it normal for me to X, Y, and Z? And I'm sure you've heard so much of it. And so are we normal? Am I normal to have these desires? Is it normal for me to not have these desires? Is it normal and so I feel like everybody, because the church doesn't talk about it, and we try so hard to be quote unquote good, perfect Christians, right?
Right.
That everybody feels super alone in their sex lives.
Yeah. Right.
And I know it's like, it's also not appropriate to just go talking to every single person about your your sex life. But I think, and just from your experience, like how would you kind of sum up what you, without violating any of the laws attached to your profession, what do you hear the most or get asked the most? Are there common themes that people come to you with, or does it vary?
It so varies.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. Based on everybody's unique story, right? We all have our unique story of harm and goodness.
Yeah.
And so people come with various, issues. It's kind of like, I don't know, like a meal or going grocery shopping. Like, well, what's important to you when you put it, your groceries in your cart? And what is it that your go-to? What is your go-to? And what do you know that you really should put in your cart, but that you really don't like those broccolis or whatever? Like, but yet your friend might like that broccoli, so she puts it in her cart. Is that normal, or is that good? Is that wrong? I don't know. I'm just kind of, it's so abstract, if you will, that question.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question, and I get where it comes from.
Yeah.
It's just so unique to each individual.
That's good to know. Yes.
I would never want to like put a recipe out there per se.
Yes.
There are some some basic principles, like, in marriage. Are we talking in marriage?
Yeah, in marriage.
So like the principle of that it does matter, and that it's to be a priority, right? Healthy marriages have sexuality as a priority.
Great.
That's a given, right? And so whether that means once a month, or whether that means once a week, or whether that, like, the average we know is either, like, as far as activity and time, it can be 3 times a week to 3 times a month.
Yeah.
all of that is average. Like
Yep.
the window is huge.
Okay. This is so helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really depends on the two people dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's their personality? What's their preference? What's their energy level? Where are they at in the season of life? A new mama of, breastfeeding.
Right.
Her chemistry is like, hey, I'm touched so much. I don't even think I can have you touch me.
Right.
Like, right.
Right.
It's so hard. So we want to give grace for where people are in any season of their journey. But at the same time, the encouragement is it's a priority. It's something that you as a couple keep working through. My husband and I have been married 40 years this summer.
Oh, that's amazing.
We're still honest engine. We're still working through it.
Yes.
Because then you have ebb and flows. You have hormone changes. Maybe he's the higher desire, but then that kind of switches because of stress, and then I am, and then or then maybe my hormones decrease, and I'm like, where did my libido go? I can't even. It takes forever to have that orgasm, and it's not coming. What's going on? And sure enough, you go and get your hormones tested, and they're way bottomed out. It's like, okay, well, so you tweak it. So there's constant grace, right? Like there's an invitation where a couple have to invite each other to live in a constant rhythm of grace in their sexual dance, because it is never a recipe that is, tried and true for year after year after year, and sexual activity after, it changes, and it's organic. And so remembering it's a priority, and remember to cover it with grace, making room for a lot of acceptance and a lot of kindness. And it takes a lot of courage for the higher desire to go across the dance floor and invite that spouse to dance. And if she's just not able to, for whatever multitude of reasons, how do you handle that? Like, how do you invite that spouse to be on the side of the dance floor with you, still fellowshipping? And maybe there's other things that can be done to help inspire the courage to get out on the dance floor again. Once again, because it's so different for us females and males. It really is. And where us females are consistently inconsistent.
That's so true.
It's so true. And it's crazy making for our husbands, right? Because they are very consistent. And they pretty much know what it takes for them to have that.
3 to the right, 2 to the left. And then it's like one night, then this is awful. And the next night it's like, why aren't you doing that thing that I said I hated?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So true.
Is that like chemistry? Yes. Okay, it is.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
Interesting.
It's chemistry, it's energy.
Okay.
So chemistry, we are consistently inconsistent as females, but we have this hormonal change that happens daily. It, ebbs and flows through the month. And to be able to name it and to know where you are in that ebb and flow and what hormone is active at that time. Because the different hormones allow us to have our nipples touched or not nipple. It's like, no way. And the sensitivity of our skin is 10 times more sensitive than our husbands. So when they rub and rub and rub, which is really kind of their go-to, their preference, it can be like chalkboard, so like cringing, like, don't rub me anymore. So, we're really different. And then it takes energy for us to be orgasmic. So
it does
a lot more energy. And so stewarding our energy, like if we are the lower desire and we know our husbands are higher, and say, what's today? It's Monday. Monday nights are our sexual dance night, right?
Yep.
And so I have to figure out how to reserve enough energy through my day on Monday.
Wow. This is so good. Right? Oh my. This is so good. Yes.
To be able to have that energy for that dance. Otherwise,
Yes.
I'm crashing and there's no hope.
There's no coming back from it. Oh my gosh, this is so helpful. Okay, can I ask you, because my husband and I have been married long enough, congratulations on 40.
Thanks.
That is amazing. I cannot wait to get to 40. But long enough now where I think I know what his question would be. Or if I were to say like, okay, I'm really going to I'm going to take an easy day. I want to reserve my energy. I want to be ready for all these things. Yeah. I feel like his response would be like hurtful that I have to get energy. Does that make sense?
Wow.
Because you said that oftentimes, and we're saying male, female, I know it can vary, but hopefully the listeners can know that.
Decipher, yeah.
Yes, decipher that. But I feel like he would be like, it's hurtful that you have to like work to want to be with me.
Yeah. So biologically, it takes energy for the female to get to that orgasm.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. It's not about them.
No.
It's not that we don't love them. It's not that we hate it. It's not, it is, biologically, we need energy.
Yes. To have that orgasm, to get to that place.
Teri,
where we have enough energy.
This is amazing information. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. That might even set some men free.
Yeah.
Listening, because rejection is so huge sexually. Right? And it's not, it's completely different biology.
Completely.
Oh
Absolutely.
My gosh.
It doesn't take hardly any energy for a man to have an orgasm.
Right.
Yeah. Well, even your body. So just think of how your body is designed. So the genitals for the female are very spread out. Like there's a lot more, real estate for everything to get engorged, right?
That's
to be
true.
Able to even have that pleasure. And whereas the husband, it's very condensed and and the biology is quick, it's fast, and it's there. For us, we need a lot of stimulation, something to respond to. And so our motor for being willing to be sexual is an emotional connection. So
can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So as females, our motor that gets us revved up is an emotional connection.
Okay.
If we don't feel emotionally connected, it's going to be really hard. We're inviting our bodies to do something that the whole person isn't engaged with. So when we are emotionally connected to our husbands, think of that as like 12 o'clock on a clock. We're like, okay, we're on the clock. We're here. We're present. And then 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock is kind of like, okay, psychologically and physically, is everything okay? Like, do I have, PMS, or do I have a headache, or am I stressed? Stressed is a killer. It's a breaker for female.
It is
arousal.
Brutal. There's there's no working around it.
Right. And so if I'm not, so 1 to 4, hey, all that's good. I'm relaxed. I'm chill. I feel connected to my husband. And as he kisses and we have that arousal time, that invitation to stimuli, right? Some kind of stimulation, then we're able to engage. And from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock, basically our bodies start really responding, and we get engorged, and we enjoy this beautiful intimate time. And that takes at least typically just to this recipe or anything, but it takes at least 10 minutes, if not 20 minutes, to get to 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. For the body to respond, unless at 12 o'clock you're already stimulated by something, somehow. Right. Maybe we typically like maybe 2 times a month have that where our husbands live, kind of where their bodies are already aroused. We're like during ovulation or right before our period, because our bodies are already kind of engorged with blood. We have more blood mass. So we have that kind of hunger, that kind of like, we can naturally. It's easier.
Yeah.
It's easier. So it might be faster if that's already happening. Yeah. But if we're coming in just pretty much just feeling emotionally connected and then open to receive the stimulation, it takes about, 10, 20 minutes to get to 7, where then it's desire and the appetite that our husband started with at 12.
Okay.
Right?
This is really helpful. Yeah.
So I'm describing the the female sexual response cycle is what I'm explaining right now.
Okay. The female sexual response cycle.
Yes. So 7 o'clock comes. Most of us can go from 7 to the 11 with just really enjoying our body's response, letting our bodies respond and move as it chooses to move and wants to move. And that can be different from dance to dance, what feels right. And enjoy an orgasm or at least an emotionally intense, beautiful connection with our husbands. So, Archibald Hart and Deborah Taylor and Archibald Hart's daughter, who can't remember, I think it's Catherine, wrote a book years ago called The Secrets of Eve. And they interviewed 2,000 Christian women about their sexuality. And 50% of them, the majority, I can't remember the percentage, but the majority of them said, if I get, basically in my words, if I get to 7 and I have an orgasm or I don't have an orgasm, if I have an orgasm 50% of the time, I'm really satisfied with my sexual dance.
Yeah.
Because they love their husbands.
Yes.
They're loving them.
It's close.
It's close, right?
Yes.
So there's not always a need or ability to have that much energy to have that orgasm.
Yeah.
Now, as I worked with Christian women through the years, what I've come to invite them to do when they come to my office and they say to me, I could care less whether I have sex again. I have no interest. Right. And I'm going, well, tell me about your dance. How has it been for you and your husband all these 20 years or 30 years or not even 10 years, whatever it is. How has it been? And they pretty much present this idea that, well, it's for him. And it's all for him. And I'm just an object of what he needs. I have the responsibility that I have to meet his needs.
Yep. It's the last check off of the end of the day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so what happens with that, what I found, is these women, they have given their bodies, their naked bodies, to their husbands. The husbands have touched them in the places that should be erotic to them, that should be stimulating, that should be delightful for their bodies to feel, but they've programmed themselves to turn it off.
Okay.
Right?
I want to get into this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Your husband touches your genitals and, offers this beautiful touch and caress.
In a safe place.
In a safe place.
Yeah.
And yet you're not blessing that. So as a wife, you're like, well, this is just for him. Let's get it over with. Let's do this quickie. Let's have this. And so my advice for women with that is, okay, first of all, the husband has to come on board, but it's like, let's not be sexual unless you can bless it.
Okay.
Let's not be sexual unless you can step into it with a positive acceptance and pleasure. So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but
this is so good.
The idea that us women, we really have an invitation to bless or curse our sexual desire or arousal or our body's response. And so when we can say, hey, this sexual gift is for me too.
It's for me too.
It's for me too.
Oh my gosh.
And what
this
testifies,
is so good. Everything is taken it from us.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is so good. This is about me too.
Exactly.
Yes.
This is about me too. And where I hear this loudly from the Lord is that he created our clitoris for one purpose.
Yeah.
Only
just
for
pleasure.
One purpose. Pleasure. Yeah. Pure pleasure. And the male has his pleasure center for multiple purposes.
Right.
Ours. And then there's 4,000 more nerve endings in a female's clitoris than there is in the head of a man's penis.
4,000 more?
4,000 more nerve endings.
So it actually feels better for us.
I say so. I think so.
Wow.
I think so.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, God's design is truly for, and okay, so let me go more into the spiritual. So from my place that I stand, I believe that the sexual self and the spiritual self cannot be divorced from each other. That they are completely integrated. And the idea that if our sexuality is a spiritual reality, and we read scripture through that lens, we're going to see the blessing of who we are as females through that gift of the female imago Dei of God. The female imago Dei of God is hospitable. God invites. He draws us in. Right? Our bodies were created to offer that female imago Dei of God to a beloved husband. And so when we are in that posture, we're living in our truest sense, as a truest self of the sexual self, as God designed it. And we don't have to say no. We don't have to, be fearful. We don't have to, be protective, which we have to in the world. We have to be protective because no one can force their way into the place of hospitality.
Right.
We have to invite.
Offer it. Yeah.
We have to offer it. And if there's not, then it's trauma, it's abuse. Right. And so our husbands can do that, unfortunately. And we can allow them to do that, which is more the codependent, this is for him, not for me kind of thing. Because if emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, we're not offering that hospitality, then we have a disassociated self.
Yeah. And I think that's very common.
Yes, very common. Very
wow.
common.
So for anyone listening who's just tracking with everything you're saying in regards to this, like how does one build back? And obviously we're not talking about abusive marriages, which there are many out there. So we're talking about two people who love God, love each other, are trying to work out this stuff, right?
Correct.
How does one start over? How do you learn to bless sex for a woman? And I have so many of the questions, and you're answering my questions without me even asking them. But like for a woman who doesn't like it, even hates it, dreads it, a man who isn't fulfilled, but they love each other, and there's just no blessing. Like where do you start?
Probably with the person's story. So we all have a story of harm.
Okay.
Whether it's cultural harming, relational, family stuff, a sibling's harm. Like what's the story? Why
does the harm, is it always sexual? Like sexual harm, or can it be something else that I just don't know anything about this. So
I think it's when we think sexual harm, I want to go more broad that everything kind of is sexual. In a way. Okay. So
I'm tracking.
So we're a little sister in this a home where everybody else's voice is more dominant. Yeah. Or we have, older sibling that just comes and scoops us up and takes us to where they want us to go. Yeah. And we never learn to have a no. Right? Wow. Yeah. That affects our sexuality. So then we grow up, we don't really believe or even know how to have our own no. And if we don't have a no, we don't have a yes. Oh. Okay. We have to have a no. Yeah. And so that younger sibling needs to know, and that, they need to know they have a no. And if big brother, wants to pick me up, and I'm the little sister, I need to be able to say, no, I don't want to be picked up. Yeah. And that's really, really crucial. That's going to affect her sexuality. and whether
Wow.
she feels dominated by an older sibling, and maybe specifically a male sibling. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, she needs to know that she has a no.
So that she can have a yes.
So that she can have a yes.
In an appropriate. Oh my goodness. I've never, ever thought about sexuality being attached to non-sexual things.
Yeah.
I've never even, this is just mind-blowing to me. Because it's like, oh, if I didn't have a sexual trauma, then therefore I shouldn't. But no, it's not. They're all attached.
Right. It's all a part of our personhood, right?
Yes.
And our personhood, sexuality is a part of that personhood. It's not this separate component. We're so integrated.
It's so good. I think I have totally, as much of an advocate for healthy sexuality as I am, I have always made it over in the distance. I've never seen it as a holistic thing in us. That is so for a woman who doesn't like it, that hasn't been through any sexual trauma, we have to go back to, and that's what you said, the story, the first. Yeah. So is that normally childhood, would you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So going back to her story and recognizing where, if she was shepherded, or parented in the idea of who she is as a person, then the layer of who she is as a female, was that blessed or was that cursed? Was that, did she have a mother that was a good example of female, or was she a super passive, or aggressive, either way,
right,
kind of female? So it comes, that's a story of harm, and not having a mother that demonstrated her own voice or her own sense of assertiveness, because assertiveness is always healthy. Aggressive or passive, neither one of those are healthy. Neither one of those contribute to healthy personhood or healthy relating to others. And so we want to train up our children, and we want to be in marriages where we give each other permission to be assertive, which is, I think, or I feel, or I long for, or I hate, or I love, or to be able to let someone name what their preferences, what their likes are, what their dislikes are, and to be able to respect that without it being a threatening thing for me. Like, oh, because, you like this, that means I have to like it. Or if I don't like that, so then who am I, and I'm less than? Or so then we kind of war with each other, in that we either think of ourselves as one down from that person, or we think of ourselves as one up from that person.
Yeah.
Any which way of that. And so we have stories even in our family of origin that are about that. One sibling that was more dominant, that everybody had to, orbit around, or not having a voice, or deception and betrayal and divorce, and some kind of story. So that person who doesn't desire or has an aversion to sexuality, being able to go back and put it all together, because it makes sense why they're presenting with it. Their story is, and when we go back, it's not random that you come to that place of aversion. It's, okay, why are we here? What's the backstory? And to be able to name that, maybe where the trauma is, do some trauma work, get it resolved, bless it instead of curse it. Know where the shame script, Satan loves using shame to keep us from living the abundant life. Yeah. So naming that our shame script, which says something about us being bad or not enough or unworthy or something like that, it's also shut down. And shame is a key namer of our past harm. Yeah. And it only takes like 3 seconds for shame to register. And,
really?
And say,
wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wow. It doesn't take any time at all for that look of disgust from somebody, or that one comment, for it to just really launch and then we believe a script about ourselves based on that. And then we live that out, and then we choose things that actually confirm it. So then we're just living out that shame, and Satan goes, woohoo, couldn't keep you from eternity, but I sure can keep you from living that abundant, free
here
life
on earth. Yeah.
Whether it's your sexual self or your spiritual self or your relational self. So yeah, I'd want to know what her story is, and then do some retraining in that. And that's
it's possible to do that, right?
Yes,
like it's possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's some, one great resource out there for couples would be Restoring the Pleasure by Cliff and Joyce Penner.
Great.
It's a step-by-step process. You put intercourse on the shelf while you're working through it.
Yep.
With no pressure. So there's not pressure.
There's not awkward. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just taken off the table, and then you work through it.
Yes. Wow. And it does really, really help to do it with a therapist, a trained therapist.
For sure.
Because I
hope you do FaceTime sessions, because you're going to get, I honestly feel like you're going to get some serious call, because this is just so helpful. It's so helpful. And for like this women, we're women, we're talking. So I'm sorry, guys. Guys listen to my podcast too, but we'll get to you. But it's so important that I just love what you said. Like, no, we have to bless it. Like, this is about us too. This isn't just about them, and it's just such a beautiful way to see it. How would you say, or what would be the best way for a couple to communicate their desires?
Yeah.
Do you have
right?
Talk you know what I mean? Because sometimes I'm like I have girlfriends whose like husbands want this thing and they don't. Or I have friends that want this thing and the husband's like, oh, or the husband always wants to have oral sex and she just doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And so he's like, no, if I can just push the right button, you'll like it someday. Yeah. So how do we determine between preference? Does this make sense? Yeah. Preference and just like, no, honestly, this is just what I like. And how do two completely different people with completely different chemistries collide in a beautiful orgasm?
Yeah. Right. Because you're making.
That was like 3 questions in one, but.
Right. Okay. So each couple is, together, they create a sum of their parts. Right?
Okay. Yep.
And so it's important. This is where grace kicks in, because it's important where we recognize, okay, you are a part. We're each a part, and together we create this sum that is a mutual, safe, beautiful sum. That's greater. That sum is greater than its individual parts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And so when it comes to, say, go back to your example of oral sex, as a therapist, I'd want to unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
As far as like where, for him, if that's what he's bidding for, what's his exposure to that? Where did that originate from? Where is it? Kind of work through, like, okay, where is that? Why is that the
so arousing or
the cream of all creams or whatever. And then to her, well, tell me more about your aversion or to that. Like, what is it that you're uncomfortable with? Together, those are parts, right? Those are different parts.
Yep.
So how in making room for understanding and grace and compassion and kindness, where can those two realities of these two different people come together to create a sum that actually will work for a love-making, honoring dance with each other? Yeah. And so giving space for that it's not one or other. It's not all or not. It's like, and maybe eventually, maybe it's, she says, I'm not comfortable. It's not something that I'm, that maybe there's some insecurity there as far as her body and what it's like, for him to be down there and all that. And so talking more about that, maybe
with each other.
with each other.
Okay.
How far can he go down on her body before she goes into protection mode, to kind of a flight, or fright kind of. So basically slowing it down and not feeling like it has to be all, but just that there's a learning of kind of a decency, like, oh, this feels good. Okay, I can sit with this for a while, but don't go any further, because maybe next time I'll be ready to have when you go down one more inch, or
yeah, okay,
or
yeah.
There's just a warmth and a kindness and a learning of each other. And if he has the mental, emotional, even spiritual discernment of, hey, this is for her. I want to pleasure her.
Yeah.
And her pleasure center, her arousal template does not involve his tongue down in her. Right.
Yeah.
Then that's to be honored. What is her arousal pleasure? And how can he bless that? And so, and vice versa also. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of staying open and curious, not cursing, but being willing to be teachable. Definitely putting on empathy and trying to figure out if it's safe. Now, if it's not safe and there's a history of trauma there, or a history of exposure, maybe she was exposed to porn with oral sex involved. Well, that's a trauma response. There's no way. So it's paired with that. So then unpairing that anxiety with that pleasure is important. We're so complex, right? And our stories,
really are,
our stories and the exposure, they matter. And in this world of highly sexualized exposure, there's a lot to consider with two people really working it out.
Yeah.
It's not an easy, and it's certainly not for cowards, because it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it does. And the vulnerability aspect brought into it as well.
Yes.
Like I tend to be more like I would say more stereotypically male in my brain in the sense of like I can just like feelings don't feel good. And so the vulnerability aspect of like, well, my husband's like a feeler, he's a talker, I'm like all cerebral.
Yeah.
And so it's a fun, I love that you call it a dance, because it's so true. Like it's just this dance of like, and I love what you said at the very beginning. It all goes back to like the story and the person. There is no recipe. And I think a lot of therapists and pastors especially just throw out recipes. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I fell in love with you the minute you told me that you don't have a recipe, because I'm like, that's somebody who actually knows people, because it's just so important.
It's so true. It's so true. And it is really, it's sad with the whole, the power of the pulpit.
Yeah.
To invite, I love what you and your husband, the passion that you guys have for being real and authentic. And
thank you.
That's where the church is really we're gonna shine and really be Christ in this world, when we can show up from that pulpit, that power place, and say, hey, we're all broken, and we all need the Lord, and we're all in this together, and I don't have a recipe for you. I can point you to the Word of God, right? And what does God's Word say? What is His love for us? Invite us to. How can we bless and honor one another more keenly and fully, and not curse one another?
Yeah, it's so good. Okay, I have 5 more minutes until an hour. Okay, can I ask you a couple fast rounds? And then will you do this again with me?
Okay, sure.
I'm serious. Like, can we please, like, I will pay you for every second of your time. Bill Hannah, send her the bill. Like, because we haven't even I haven't even asked any of my like questions on the list. This is just so
I want to delight.
Amazing.
I want to just bless you in asking me, because I actually, I know that the Lord's called me to teach the church about healthy sexuality. Yes. And this is just the gift that he he's like,
Aw.
Teri, I'm still calling you to do that.
Oh,
And so
I
this
love
is
that.
affirming for me
Oh,
too.
good,
So
good.
it's a gift. Thank you for giving me this time.
Absolutely. You're so needed. Like I'm in the trenches with women and people and couples and affairs and porn and you hear it all, and it's lack of desire or too much desire or addictions and all of the things. And I'm just like, oh God, like help us. And there are just so I'm just so grateful for the work that you're doing. It's so needed. Like it doesn't, I always tell our staff, like it doesn't help the world for Christians to walk around defeated, hating their husbands, hating their wives, hating sex, or, it doesn't help anybody to be miserable.
No.
And I love what you said too, like you get to eternity, but we're supposed to live abundantly here, and it's going to take some help. And so I hope everybody like books so many appointments with you, because it needs to be prioritized. It needs to be prioritized.
I'll point them. I don't want to work that hard, so don't send too many.
You got 4 kids and grandkids, right? But I'm just so grateful for this, and too, in like a bigger platform, it just helps. Like just these. That's why I had Randy, my therapist, on a couple times, because I'm just like, not everybody can afford it, not everybody has the time for it, but these are just like, no, like we have to do the work. Like we have to do the work. So can I give you a couple lightning rounds?
Sure.
Okay. How, after being married for a long time, how does one keep sex fresh?
Okay, that's a great question. Well,
you know what I mean? Like post kids or grandkids, but if sex is supposed to be what's bonding us until the end of time, how do we? You kind of spoke to the ebb and flows earlier, but like how do you? Do you have tips or pointers?
I definitely keep it fun.
Okay.
So fun. We don't choose each other outside of having fun with each other, right? So fun is super holy, super sacred.
Yes.
And so find ways to have fun, adventure, right? Like get out of the rut.
Yeah.
Make it a priority, which I already said, which means there's a date. There's a plan. Couples like, I don't want to plan it. It's like, well, you're going to be more satisfied if you plan
it. Right.
Especially for the female, because we have to engage our whole selves.
And what I've learned too is we have to reserve our energy.
Exactly.
This is so great. Yes. Okay.
So if that means renting, if you have little ones, and it means, hey, you hire a babysitter and you go get 2 nights at a hotel, or 2 hours. 2 hours at a hotel.
Yes.
So that we've been known to do that through the years. Just keep it priority, keep it on the radar, keep it creative. As far as opportunity, every couple kind of has their dance that really works.
Okay.
And that's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the connecting, nurturing kind of dance. But every once in a while, we need to throw in a honeymoon, right? We need to throw in that passion.
Yes.
And so bringing the honeymoon into it, whatever that is, whether it is another trip or whether it's bringing, that honeymoon into the bedroom with music and candles and oils or whatever it is. But have variety with that your dance starts with even a meal or dancing together or going and playing or wrestling or whatever it is that has that sense of connectedness and play. Yeah. So I hope I answered that.
That's amazing. Yes. I love it. To men who feel rejection constantly sexually, how can you, again, we're not speaking to abusive homes. We're speaking to loving homes that are trying to figure it out. How would you encourage them to help their partners, help their wife, just how to be the safe space? Where does a man start who wants something that he's not getting in a godly way?
Right. Well, that's such a great question and complex because it would be individual again.
Yep.
In general, sex is not essential for life.
Oh, yeah.
Like we think it is, but we can live without it.
Yeah.
So saying that, take the pressure off for a minute, just for a minute with that. And you might lose some males listening to you with my comment. But I just want to hang on to
No, this needs to be said. Yeah, this is great.
If the pressure is off and the curiosity is put on, hey, beloved wife,
I
want to be curious about you. And
with sex off the table.
With the pressure off.
Okay, this is so
and
good.
And widening. I have my mentors who he's passed recently, Dr. Doug Rosenau. He says, "Man, put something besides just the egg of sex in your basket." Like, there's so many other ways to make love to your wife. What ways is she going to feel loved and cherished? How can you put other eggs in your basket to do that and to delight in her and to bring her into a place of feeling cherished by you?
Yeah.
Now, your cherish is to have your wife give herself to you sexually, right? So it's different. And so how can we incorporate a little more grace there and kindness and understanding that wife? The wife, I would say, okay, wife, let's unpack your story, know why you have this aversion to your husband. What's the harm there? What's the resentment? What's still unsaid, unspoken? Is there a history of you just giving your body and his pleasure, he enjoying the pleasure, but you not? Like, what is the story there? Why are you aversive? And how can we work through that and bless so that you can live in your female imago Dei of God that is created to offer hospitality to your husband in a I want to say selfish way.
Right. They would love
pleasure.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Because our sexuality is both selfish. No one can feel our orgasm except for us.
Right.
Our husbands cannot feel it.
Yeah.
But it's also selfless in that we give and we open and we're that vulnerable. So what about that is scary for her? What about that? There's so much here, and I'm hoping I'm not harming anybody by just throwing out these little
No. It's so good. And I think everybody, your heart around this comes through so vibrantly. Like yes, I know. I love you because you don't want to say you hate generalities. I can tell. I know. You're doing a great job with them though. And so when you say like almost selfishly, I think every husband out there would just be thrilled for their wives to be selfish sexually.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's the aphrodisiac right there.
There it is. Yep, that's all they want.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, that's
They're longing for that.
Good.
They're longing.
That's so good.
Yeah. And similar, just to bless the male imago Dei, right?
Yeah.
God pursues us. He reaches towards us. He moves towards us. The male body does that. Like they're just acting in who they are created to be. Yeah. It's just working that out in grace and truth and love and empathy and humility.
That's
in that process. Yeah.
That's so good. Teri, this might be one of my favorite podcast episodes I've ever done.
That's fun. Oh my goodness. That's awesome.
This has been so great. My husband just texted me and he goes, "Does this wake you want to have sex tonight?"